Alright, Math 6, Unit 7, Lesson 5, using negative numbers to make sense of context. So we're going to talk about today negative amounts of money. Okay, talking about some money today with negative numbers. So here we have a notice and wonder chart, and it's called It Comes and It Goes. And we can see doing my chores, babysit my cousin, buy my lunch, get my allowance, buy a shirt, pet my dog. And we have different amounts listed next to that, right? So we have some different values. We have positive values. We also have some negative value ones here as well. So what do you notice happening every time there's a negative number? What is happening with the activity? One key thing I see happening is this word buy. Buy. Every time you buy something, in terms of the chart, you end up with a negative number, don't you? When you do something, chores, babysitting, getting an allowance, you end up with a positive number. So in a chart like this, it appears that we're talking about some activities will give you money and some activities will take you money or cost you money. Of course, petting my dog is free. It doesn't cost me anything. All I get back for petting my dog is love. Isn't that sweet? So, there you go. So, what do you notice? What do you wonder? Have a conversation about that, and you can talk some more. But the big thing here is recognizing the positive values and negative values when you're talking about money, and just love when you're talking about a dog. Activity number 2. Here we are. The manager of the concession stand keeps records of all the supplies she buys and all the items she sells. So we're buying things and selling things. The table shows some of her records. So here are the items. The quantity is how many they have, and the value in dollars of what it costs to get that or give that, buy it or sell it. So interesting. We have some that are negative here. So donuts is at negative 58, and the value here is positive. Okay. Straws are a positive, but the value there is negative. Hot dogs is another negative one, but the value is positive. Apples were negative with a positive value in dollars. French fries were negative, positive there. So our ones that were a negative value are our pizza and our straws. Interesting, right? Okay. So some things, when you have 58 or minus 58 of them, gave you a positive value. All right. So the first question wants to know, which items did she sell? And explain your reasoning. Okay. So when you sell something, think about what that means. When we sell something, we are giving it away, right? So and sometimes we would consider that being a loss, right? Or it's going to be less than what we have. So in the context of giving something away, losing something, having less, when you look at the quantity column, which values are becoming less? Well, we would say that the donuts must be something she's selling because the quantity she has is minus 58, right? So she just lost 58 of them. Hot dogs lost 39 of them. Apples lost 40. And French fries lost 88. So those are things I would say that she has sold. And the reason for that as well is that when you look at those ones she sold, it works out to have a positive amount of money as a result of losing that. If I lost 58 hot dogs but I got $37, it probably tells me that I sold 58 hot dogs and that's how much money I made selling them, right? In the opposite way, we'd say if I have 3,000 straws and the value is negative $10, that means it costs me $10 to buy 3,000 straws. Just like it cost me $116 to buy 13 pizzas. But we'll see more of that in just a second. How can we interpret negative 58 in this situation? So the negative 58 is right there. And negative 58 to me indicates that she sold 58 donuts at her concession stand. All right, people want a donut. She sold 58 donuts. That's one of the biggest selling items, donuts. How can we interpret negative 10.35? How do we interpret this number? Well, that's going to be the value there goes to the straws. Now straws, she's getting straws, right? So she's having to buy the straws. So this would be the cost to buy 3,000 straws. So for her to buy 3,000 straws, it cost her $10.35. On which item did she spend the most amount of money? Okay, does she spend the money? Now, spending the money means that in the value side, the value is going to be negative because she's spending money. And the one that has most money spent is going to be on pizza, which we see is at negative $116.87. So basically we could think she spent that much money. She spent $116 on pizza. Alright, so fun little chart here, but sometimes these little tables are a little tricky to understand because you just have to kind of figure out what's the negative representing, what's the positive representing. And again, when you're talking about buying and selling, when I sell something, the quantity decreases, but the value that I'm earning increases. So it's a little bit about thinking about the perspective of what's happening with money. That's a key thing that'll come up again and again. So, for example, for the person who's selling stuff, she lost $58 but got 37, or 58 donuts but got $37. What about from the person who went to the store, right? So if I'm the person that goes to the concession stand, okay, and here's her little window and she's selling her stuff here, yay, right? I'm taking my money and I'm giving my money in exchange for a donut. So and this person has the money is negative, but the donut is positive. But for the concession stand, the money is positive and the donut is negative because that's the exchange, right? We're trading that way. We'll talk more about that later. Let's look at the next page. Drinks for sale. A vending machine in an office building sells bottled beverages. The machine keeps track of all changes in the number of bottles from sales and from machine refills and maintenance. So it keeps track of sales, so money, so bottles going out, that's going to be probably a subtraction, and refilling is going to be adding more back into it. The record shows the changes for every 5-minute period over an hour. So this is every 5 minutes, how many bottles are going out, and how many are coming in. Okay, so we would say a sale is going to be a negative value, and then we would say a refill is going to be a positive value. So what might a positive number mean in this context? Well, we just said that. A positive is going to be a refill, like adding more into the machine, and a negative is going to be a sale because we're taking it out of the machine. So when you look at this first one, between 8 o'clock and 8:04, when -4 means that they sold 1 bottle. But then there was a refill at 8:05 and 8:09, so they refilled with 12 bottles. Now, I don't know why it needed 12 when you only sold 1, but that's what the machine did. Alright, number 2, what would a 0 in the second column mean in this context? So we have some zeros right here. So we can see we sold 1, refilled 12, sold 4, sold 1, sold 5, sold 12, sold 2, and then nothing. So what do these nothings represent is what's asking here. Could mean a couple things. It could mean that you sold nothing, right? There were no sales. That's possible. Could be no sales right here, and that no one came to buy whatever the vending machine is. There were no bottles sold in this period. Another thing it could mean is it could mean that you sold 2 and refilled 2, leaving you with a change of 0. Remember, the machine is measuring changes. So it could also mean that the number that were sold and the number that were refilled were exactly the same. So that's another thing. So there actually are 2 options for number 2. Something to think about. Which numbers, positive or negative, result in fewer bottles in the machine? So do negative numbers or positive numbers mean fewer bottles in the machine? Well, we would say that every time we have a negative number, it represents that we're selling something. So we would say that a negative number means fewer because it's a sale and we're having less of them now. Number 4 asks, at what time was there the greatest change to the number of bottles in the machine? And how did that change affect the number of remaining bottles in the machine? Alright, so where was the biggest change, the biggest increase or decrease? Our biggest change happened here at plus 24. So between 850 and 854, we had an increase of 24 bottles. Alright, so whatever the total is in the machine, it went up by 24 at that point. That was the change in the number of volume in bottles, which actually makes the most sense if you look at it, because they had sold 4, and then another one is 5, another 5 is 10, and 12 makes 22, 23, 24, and another 6 makes 30. So from here to here, they had 30 bottles go out, so they definitely needed to add some bottles back in the machine at that point, didn't they? At which time period, 805 or 825, was there a greater change to the number of bottles in the machine? Okay, so let's compare the 805 and the 825. So 805 is a plus 12, and the 825 is a minus 12. So which one has the greater change? In our case here, we would say neither, right? It's the same amount of change. One just happens to be changing in the positive direction, and another is changing in the negative direction. But it has the same amount of change because those numbers are opposites, right? Think about your number line again. Here's 0, negative 12, and 12. When they're opposite, they have the same change value. So the machine must be emptied to be serviced. If there are 40 bottles in the machine when it is to be serviced, what number will go in the second column in the table? Okay, so if there's 40 bottles in there, if there are 40 bottles in the machine, and it has to be emptied, then what needs to happen to our change? If it's at 40, and we want to get from 40, and we want to get from 40 to 0, what has to happen? Well, we need to have a change of negative 40 bottles. Okay, and again, think about this. I have 40, then I have to subtract 40 in order to get to 0. The goal is to have 0, so the change is going to be negative 40. All right, let's take a look at your summary before we jump into tonight's homework. Sometimes we represent changes in a quantity with a positive and a negative number. Positive ones seem to be increasing, negative changes are decreasing. So if the quantity increases, the change is positive. If it decreases, the change is negative. Okay, so here's an example here. Suppose 5 gallons of water is put in a washing machine. So we're putting it in, which means we're increasing how much is in the washing machine. We can represent the change in the number of gallons as plus 5. If 3 gallons is emptied, that means we are taking it out. And we can represent it as a negative 3. All right? So putting something in is positive, taking something out is negative. This also works when we talk about money as well, positive and negative, right? If you get $30 for your birthday, okay, you can consider that as a positive. But if you spend $18, you buy something, we can consider that a negative, okay? Now, again, which is positive and negative depends on a person's perspective, okay? Again, if she gets $30 from her grandmother, or her grandma gives her $20 for her birthday, Claire sees it as plus 20, but grandma sees it as minus 20 because grandma had to give that to Claire. There's always an even exchange back and forth. There's always an opposite happening someplace. Okay, so the thing here is just remember when you're using positive and negative numbers to represent changes, you have to be very clear about what it means when the change is positive and what it means when the change is negative. You have to be very clear about what you're talking about. That's the key thing. I'm going to pause there, let you work on your homework. We'll come back and check it together in just a few minutes. All right, homework time. Write a positive or negative number, so a positive or a negative number, to represent each change in the high temperature. All right, so today's high temperature was 4 degrees less. So 4 degrees less is a change going down. We would say negative 4 because 4 degrees less. Wednesday's high temperature was 3.5 degrees less. Again, that's a less, so let's use a negative 3.5 to show the change going down, a decrease in temperature. Thursday's high temperature was 6.5 degrees more. More is an increase, so we're going to be adding. You could write plus 6.5, or you could just do 6.5. Friday's high temperature was 2 degrees less, so again that's going to be a decrease, so we would say -2. Number 2, decide which of the following quantities can be represented by a positive number and which can be represented by a negative number. Give an example of a quantity with the opposite sign in the same situation. So first you have to decide positive or negative, and then do something with the opposite. So for example, Tyler's puppy gained 5 pounds. Now gaining 5 to me is an increase, so that is a plus 5. Gaining is I'm increasing. So what would be an opposite sign? We could say the puppy lost 5 pounds. So that would be a -5. So that's what you're supposed to write there. So there's two parts. There's the solution to this one here as a sign, and then writing another opposite statement to what's written there. Okay? So continuing on here, the aquarium leaked 2 gallons. To leak is to decrease. That's going to be -2. Okay? So you could say they added 2 gallons of water, and that would be a +2. So just thinking of something to say that goes with that. I'll let you finish this part off here. I'll work on this part. So Andre received a gift of $10. To receive is going to be an increase. He's adding that to what he has, so +10. Kieran giving means I'm losing it in a sense, so -10. And the climber descended, that's going to be going down 550 feet, -550. So instead of descending, you could ascend, to go up something. Alright, make up a situation where quantity is changing. Explain what it means to have a negative change, a positive change, and give an example of each. So you just need to think of a situation where there's a change. So you can think about going to the store, you can think about buying something, selling something. Maybe you are having a candy sale at school, right? And you have a box of chocolate. I know the kids in my school are selling chocolate right now. So you have a box of chocolate, and you could talk about that when you sold 5 bars, it's 5 bars of chocolate less in your box. But in positive stuff, you got the $1 per chocolate bar, so you increased your sales and you got $5. So some examples there you could use. I'll let you figure that one out on your own, but you have to write a positive, a negative, and give that example. Okay, on a number line, label the points that are 4 units away from 0. Okay, so 4 units away from 0. We're going to look at our next page because that's where things are at, the number line here. So the points that are 4 units away from 0 are going to be at -4 and +4. They're 4 units away, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you fold the number line so the vertical crease goes through 0, right there, if you fold that up, the points you label will match up. Explain why that happens. So if you fold this, why do those points line up? And again, the reason for that is that they are an equal distance from 0. In fact, they are equal means they are the same exact distance from 0, which is why they're going to line up there. On the number line, label the points that are 5 half units away from 0. Okay? So if you forget what a 5/2 is, this is like we're going to take it, instead of looking at whole numbers, we could think of it this way. If we broke these up into half sections like so, half sections like so, we're going to do 5 half sections. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here's 1, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's another one. So this is positive 5/2, negative 5/2. And if you remember what this is, actually this is what? 2 1/2, which makes sense because it's right there in between 2 and 3. So negative 2 1/2 over there. Okay? Now the question though says, what is the distance between those points? So what's the distance between negative 2 1/2 and positive 2 1/2? That's a great question. So the distance is what's the space from here to here. Okay? So you can think of it this way, however you want to think about it. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. That's partial distance, or distance so far. Then I also have a half and a half. Well, the two halves become a whole, so in total I have a distance of 5 units. 5 units from here to here is 5 units. And again, you can see it with a half. If you count it by halves, you'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And those are my 5 units to show the distance between negative 2.5 and positive 2.5 is 5. And finally, some review. Evaluate each expression. 2 to the third power is 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. So I have 8 times 3, which is 24. Here we have 4 squared, which is 4 times 4 over 2, which is the same as 16 over 2, which is 16 divided by 2, which equals 8. 3 to the first power is simply 3. 6 squared divided by 4, well, that's 6 times 6 divided by 4. 6 times 6 is 36, divided by 4 is 9. 2 to the third, again, is still 8, just like before. And 8 minus 2 is 6. 10 squared is 10 times 10 plus 5 squared, 5 times 5. So that's 100 plus 25 for a total of 125. Alright, that's it for today. Have a great day, and we will see you next time.